Dobre. All right, hi everyone. Well, thanks for coming out. I want to say happy birthday on my own behalf to my friends and generous hosts here from Seed. I'm so proud of what you guys have done. I'm so proud to be part of it. This is really a great thing, and 10 years, that's the real deal. I also want to say dobro utro to our generous hosts here in Sofia. Your warmth and the friendliness of your people has amazed me. Your pride has kind of infected me. And your street signs continue to mystify me. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do here in the future. One of the kind of confusing things about this particular speech is that while the whole purpose of this is to talk about 10 years in the future, and you're going to hear some amazing stories about what your business might be like in 2025 or how to prepare your business for the future, and that stuff might indeed help you grow your company over the next 10 years. But in reality, the thing that might be most important, the thing that might help you grow your business the most over the next 10 years is to look back at what worked over the past 10 years. So we'll start our look into the future by looking at what worked in the past. That is, if the future ever comes to this device. All right. The great myth of visionary entrepreneurs. Maybe it'll help you to look into the future. But what we have done at Money Magazine, at Inc., still somewhat in the belly of the beast, aren't I, Steve? What we've done at Inc. over the past 37 years is try to answer the question over and over again about what helps entrepreneurs grow, what makes good entrepreneurs succeed. And we think we have a pretty good idea. It's not how much money they had when they started. It's not when they started. It's not what industry they were in. It's the character of the entrepreneur. And we think that over 37 years, we have a pretty good idea of what makes successful entrepreneurs different. And it's not, contrary to popular belief, some superpower, some super ability to see the future. Instead, it's about the character of the entrepreneur. Now, we're not the only ones who think that. Talk to any VC, and they'll tell you that they invest in the entrepreneur, not the idea, not the business plan, but the person who has to make that plan work. But you don't have to take my word for it. After 37 years at Inc., we have data. And I'll share it with you, but because I'm a journalist and not an engineer, I'm not going to start with the data. I'm going to start with a story. The story is about, of course, an entrepreneur named Hill Davis. He was the founder of a company called J. Hilburn, and I first encountered Hill Davis when I had just started at Inc. magazine in 2012. I'd been there for only a few months, and I read about him in Inc. Now, as Steve said, before I got to Inc., I was part of the Wall Street press. I worked for a lot of investment-oriented magazines like Fortune, Money, CBS Money Watch online, and, of course, the vampire squid itself, Goldman Sachs. And that was a very different kind of place, all those from Inc. I spent a lot of time there writing about people who were very well dressed, who were very well spoken, who made a lot of predictions about the future, none of which ever came true, but no one ever seemed to care. What mattered was that they be persuasive and be confident and be good looking. Most of my time I was spent trying to protect my readers from what those people on Wall Street were trying to do to them. Hill Davis had also worked on Wall Street, but he left it to start a company, to his credit. The company was a custom-fitted shirt company. So Davis's vision was that what he called a a fashion consultant would come to your office, to your home, and take your measurements. The measurements would be shipped off to China, where the shirt would be made in a factory and would come back to you in a couple of weeks, perfectly tailored. He figured that by using independent contractors for the fashion consultants, and by using a lot of stuff online, he would be able to cut costs and undercut the competition, and he was right about that. But as often happens in entrepreneurship, things did not go as expected. The Chinese factory used inferior fabrics that didn't hold up very well to washing. The buttons fell off, and not surprisingly, customers shipped the shirts back to J. Hilburn and wanted a refund. And as returns went up, sales went down, and Hill Davis, who had invested a lot of his own money in the company, was in serious financial straits. The bank foreclosed the mortgage on his house, and he had to move out of his house with his wife and his 2 daughters. And at this moment of maximum desperation for Hill Davis, he got a call from Wall Street. Wall Street wanted him back. They wanted him back bad. They wanted him back so bad they offered him what's called a 3x3 contract. $3 million and a guarantee of a job for 3 years. And Hill Davis did what any good father would do, and husband, as he considered this offer. And he called the Wall Street recruiter back. And he said no. He said he was going to stay with his company because he had faith in his idea and he would make it work. Before I read that passage in Inc., I was a financial reporter. After I read that package, I was an entrepreneurship fanboy. I began to think, these are the kind of people I want to write about. This is the kind of story, as a journalist, I want to be associated with. These are the kind of business people I want to help. Entrepreneurs are the heroes of the economy. They create the jobs. They're the foundation of all the innovation. And from a business journalist point of view, they create the best stories. Now, it so happened that while I became a convert, all my colleagues at Inc. had known all this for 37 years. Inc., after all, was the first magazine to put Steve Jobs on the cover. And for 37 years, over thousands of stories and tens of thousands of interviews, we've always tried to get to the bottom of one question. How do successful entrepreneurs do it? In fact, one of our most popular franchises in Inc. is the How I Did It franchise, which is usually the cover of the July-August issues you see right here. How do they do it? They do it because of 3 special aspects of their character. A willingness to take risk, which I call, in the American vernacular, guts. A relentless focus on their business to the point of being willing to change the direction of a business at a moment's notice with no ego and no hesitation. And a denial of failure, a refusal ever, ever, ever to give up, which I and psychologists who've discovered the importance of this kind of feeling, not just in success in business, but in success in life, call grit. Guts, focus, and grit. Now, you can say, well, all right, well, Eric, you're a journalist. You can make this stuff up. Have you ever asked the entrepreneurs what makes them successful? And the answer is, well, yes. We have asked them. We ask them every year. And not only that, we make sure we ask the most successful of the entrepreneurs. And we can do that because we put together every year a list of the fastest growing U.S. companies. The 5,000 go up on Inc.com online, and we put the top 10%, the top 500, in the September issue of Inc. magazine. Now, when we say fast-growing companies, we mean really fast-growing companies. The number 1 company last year, as you see, grew 101,000%. in the previous 3 years. When we send out the notice to those winning entrepreneurs that they're on the list, we also send them a survey. About 50% of them respond to the survey. And over the years, we've compiled a portrait of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, and it's surprisingly consistent over the years. So what have we learned? Well, according to our CEO survey, successful entrepreneurship is a young man's game, and by young, I mean that 2/3 of them are under 45, and by man, I mean that 90% of them are male. Entrepreneurship is a way of life. Nearly 3/4 of them started more than 2 companies. Even those who didn't get on the Inc. 5000 with their first company at least started one before they were 40, 90%. And entrepreneurship, in about 2/3 of the cases, is literally in their DNA. Why do people become entrepreneurs? Well, the successful ones have a variety of different answers, but they all kind of tend towards one thing, which says, because I had to, because it was who I was, because I had an idea and I couldn't not do it, and I wanted to control my own destiny. There is one reason, though, that didn't resonate at all with the most successful entrepreneurs, and it's the one that a lot of people ascribe to why you ought to go into entrepreneurship, and it was this. Fewer than 10% said they became entrepreneurs to get rich. Did I say something about business focus? In the first year that successful entrepreneurs started their company, 78% of them worked more than 60 hours a week in that year. More than half of them still do. Did I say you have to be attuned to risk? Nearly 80% thought luck had a lot to do with their success. Success, failure, could have gone either way. One of the things about the CEO survey until 2014 was that we never really had anything else to compare it to. We just asked the winners of the Inc. 5000 contest. But in 2014, we got another insight. The Gallup organization, which the international polling organization, was doing a book trying to figure out what traits were associated with successful entrepreneurs. And so when we heard about the book, we asked if we could give that same survey to the honorees of the Inc. 5000. And we did, and the results astonished us and blew the Gallup people away. Now let me explain what you see right here. The 10 attributes, the 10 character traits around the circle represent the character traits that the Gallup poll tested people for. The blue slices, the blue pie slices, represent the answers that the Inc. 5000 winners gave. The yellow, the smaller yellow slices, represent the answers that ordinary entrepreneurs gave. In other words, 85% of the Inc. 5000 had risk taker, willingness to take risk, as an outstanding character trait compared to just 22% of ordinary entrepreneurs. Business focus as an outstanding character trait applied to 72% of the Inc. 5000 winners compared to 20% of ordinary entrepreneurs, and so on, 71% for determination, grit, compared to 23% of ordinary entrepreneurs. Willingness to take risk, relentless focus on business, and grit. But what's an example? Inc., of course, has 37 years worth of stories of risk takers and relentless business-focused peoples. But one of the stories that I really like the most was this story about Alberto Perez, co-founder of Zumba, Inc.'s 2013 Company of the Year, which is a dance exercise company you may know. Alberto Perez, who's from Colombia, wanted to take the company to the US, and his 2 American partners, however, had no distribution, and together with Perez, they had no money to buy it. However, they were lucky enough to find one American entrepreneur who had a video company who was willing to distribute Zumba's dance videos with one condition. The American said, well, this guy Perez, if he's going to be the front man for this company, he's got to speak English, right? He speaks English, doesn't he? And Alberto's American partner said, well, yeah, sure, he speaks English. Why wouldn't he speak English? Why do you think he just wouldn't speak English? Alberto Perez does not speak a word of English. So the American said, that's good. Then I'll come by the studio tomorrow, and we'll sign the contract. So Alberto Perez had one day to learn English. So he and his American partners practiced and practiced 3 sentences. And when the American partner showed up, Alberto came off the dance floor, all sweaty, and he walked up very confidently to the American partner. He said, hi, how you doing? Hey, I'm sorry, I'm all sweaty. Got to take a shower. See you later. The contract was signed, and the rest is Zumba history. Let's talk about business focus. For this, I turned for help to Mark Suster, a VC in Los Angeles with Upfront Ventures, a man who's seen thousands of pitches and funded hundreds of companies and knows better than anyone that most startups do fail. But he wrote a blog post the other day that I thought was interesting to pass on to the startups here, was how to decrease the odds that your startup will fail. And Mark's point was that while the odds are stacked against you, you can make a tremendous difference in your odds of success by attending to a few very simple business propositions. Business focus. Address the size of the market and the structure of the market. So if you're Viable.com, who supplied, by the way, my excellent tour guide in Sofia, you would want to know what's the size of tours for tourists. It's $1 billion market. And what's the structure of the market? Is there a dominant player in it? Well, yes, there is. Viator, which is owned by, what is it? Anyway, one of the big travel websites. But the angle into the market is that private tour guides don't have any kind of way to connect with their users, and that's where Viable fits in. Make space. For here, Mark's point was, you need to know the competition, you want to figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are, and you have to recognize that the competition will not be static once you enter the market. You have to figure out how they're going to react to your business. In his case, the company he was talking about was MakeSpace, which is one of his portfolio companies. They face a very big competitor called Public Storage, but what MakeSpace does is come to your house, take the furniture out of your crowded New York apartment, and load it onto a truck, take it away to a central location, and bring it back to your crowded apartment whenever you're ready for it. Public Storage doesn't do that. Public Storage has thousands of warehouses around the country, which gives MakeSpace an incredible advantage because they don't have all that real estate cost, and they can undercut Public Storage at every point. Business focus, microeconomics, as Suster calls it, things like customer acquisition costs, calculate that against the lifetime value of the customers you'll acquire. And finally, know the history of other companies that have gone before you into the market. No idea is totally original, and you can learn from others' mistakes, and if you don't, you're being foolish. Grit. For this, I wanted to use the example of a company that we wrote about just recently. The company's founded by Karen Nosif Aldridge. The company's called Rebel Athletics. Aldridge broke into entrepreneurship with a designer jean company. It went broke in the 2008 crisis. And then later on, she came upon a fast-growing market that she thought she could enter successfully. It's a market called all-star cheerleading. Now, without immersing you in the weirdness of American cheerleading culture, think of all-star cheerleading as like team gymnastics. 15 or 20 girls doing flips and spins and tosses, all very competitive in competitions against each other. Of course, the teams need uniforms, It's a fast-growing sport. Aldridge realized that this was soon becoming a $300 million market. The market structure. How is it structured? Uniforms are sold not in stores, but through the gyms that organize the teams and train the girls in their gymnastics. There are no showrooms because there are no stores, so the competitions function as the uniform showrooms. When the teams get together, they then see the wares that the various uniform makers can provide. But there's a serious competitor in this market. The incumbent is named Varsity. They controlled most of the competitions when Aldridge entered it. And at those competitions, Rebel couldn't show their uniforms. Only Varsity could show its uniforms. But Rebel is a challenger brand. It's run by an entrepreneur, and like any of you who enter a market, you'll be the challenger brand. There will be an incumbent that will be larger, better funded, and have a bigger marketing budget than you do, and so you will have to be inventive, and that's what Aldridge was. She underpriced Varsity by using Chinese manufacturing. She made one-of-a-kind fashions. No girls' team wants to have a uniform that looks like any other girls' team uniform. Rebels were unique, and she also improved on customer service. But as Suster pointed out, the competition moves. The competition doesn't stay static when you've entered the market. And what Varsity did was to buy the only other host of competitive events. In other words, wiped out all the showrooms in which Rebel could show its uniforms. And at that point, you might have thought that Karen Aldridge would fold her tent and go home. But there's this thing called grit. What Karen Aldridge did was to show up at the next Varsity event in a truck, a lorry, inside of which was a Rebel athletic showroom where girls and their moms could come in and try on the uniforms. But the problem is that it's illegal to park a truck that big near the venues where the competitions happen unless the truck is there to shoot a film. So, enter Rebel Athletics documentary film company. So now the girls and their moms come into the truck, they can try on their uniforms, and there they can be interviewed for a documentary film. And what do you suppose the film is about? The film is about how girls can fight back against bullies. Grit. So how do most successful entrepreneurs do it? This speech would have been so easy to write if I could have told you that there was an app or a website that you could go to. How to grow your company for the next 10 years.com. There is no app. It would be great if there was some financial ratio. So if you can get your customer acquisition cost to be 0.075 of your lifetime customer value, then you're home free, your company will definitely survive. There is no magic financial ratio. It would be nice if by practicing yoga and measured breathing, you could always make the right decision for your business, but there is no personal exercise. No one in this room knows what's going to happen over the next 10 years. No one knows what industries are going to be strongest. No one knows what technologies will be dominant. But I can tell you this for sure, that sometime over the next 10 years, in your company, as you try to grow it, you're going to be faced with a situation where you have to take a risk. Will you do it? You're going to face a situation where the competitors make a move against you. Are you going to be aware of it? Are you going to be able to respond to it? Are you going to be focused enough on the metrics for your business that you're going to respond successfully? sometime over the next 10 years as you try to grow your business, you're going to be discouraged. You're going to find roadblocks. You're going to meet that situation where you feel like you're never going to get up after being knocked down. Will you get up? Entrepreneurship is an endurance sport or a blood sport. But in the end, there's only one person who can make a difference. It's your business. It's you. It's your dream. Only you can realize it. And you're the one who can make it. You're the one who has to answer the call about taking risks, about focusing on your business, and about grit. Is it in you? Thanks. Steve, do we have time for questions?
So we have a microphone. I will bring it around. We actually have at least 15 minutes, which is great. So let's take advantage of this. And who's got the first question? Come on, guys. Guys. Oh, no, he's just standing up to leave. All right, over here. Let's turn this on. Let's make sure it's on. Otherwise, I was going to ask all the questions. On. There we go. Where are you? Somewhere? Somewhere? Oh, way over there. Okay, I'm coming. This is like a sprint. Here you are, mate. Nah, just go for it.
Hi, everyone. So my question is, in the beginning you said by looking in the future we have to look back, but don't you think when we are looking back we are biased by the past? So instead of making some innovative things and, I don't know, making some great changes in the world, we just make some improvements and don't come up with innovations that much.
Excellent question. Does the past influence our future and bias us?
I think that you're missing a bet if you don't learn from the past. One of the things that has struck me as the editor of Inc. is that entrepreneurship is a calling. It's a path that doesn't really know boundaries. That the entrepreneur who's founded a wooden pallet company has met payroll and has taken responsibility for all the souls who work for him and who's been the person who makes the final decisions about that company has more in common with the founder of a software company in a totally different industry than either of those people has with someone who works for a giant corporation in their same industries. There's something about having borne that responsibility that makes you part of a special fraternity. So I think that if you look back at what has worked for other entrepreneurs, it applies to you, whatever the time period you're in, and whatever industry you're in.
All right, so learn from history, but don't let it cloud you. Okay, here we go. Oh, we got lots now. All right, shaking up.
Hello, I'm Ardian Hoxha from Pristina.
A little louder.
From Pristina, from Kosovo.
Uh-huh.
I've come across this article that says that the 9-to-5 job is not that bad, really. And I want your opinion on being an entrepreneur. That's where we want to go. But how do we make the link between the 9-to-5 job and the transition to entrepreneurship? And basically why it's important to get the skills that it takes to run a company and...
So how do we transition?
Yeah.
Well, I think that entrepreneurship is totally not compatible with a 9-to-5 job. And Steve, I'm sorry, it's not compatible with a 3-day work week either. Don't go into entrepreneurship because you want to work less. It won't work that way. It is totally consuming. Doesn't everyone agree?
But any tips? I think he's asking tips to break free from the 9 to 5. Like, how do you get out of the work week
Oh,
rut
if you're
and then-
transitioning. Oh,
yeah.
I see. Okay.
Basically, my question is, as an entrepreneur, you have to learn a lot of things yourself that you could have learned at a much lower cost in the 9 to 5 job. So why the 9 to 5 job is important before going to be an entrepreneur? Because I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I've never worked on a 9 to 5 job, and I had to learn things by myself. So I want to hear it from you.
Okay. All right. The path that you took of starting from scratch and teaching yourself everything it's not uncommon. It's been done, and it takes that kind of entrepreneurial dedication that you clearly have. The far more common path is to work a job, to have even the beginning of a career where you begin to develop contacts, you have a lot of domain knowledge, and then you segue in taking some of the customers with you into your own business. That's by far the most well-beaten path to entrepreneurship that our research shows. What if the career that you dream of isn't the career that you're in your 9 to 5 job? I would say you should get a 9 to 5 job in the career that you want to work in, and that's a much better way to work your way in. As you've observed, do you regret not working 9 to 5?
I work 9 to 9.
Yes, yes.
So maybe
But you
that's
had
a
to
yes.
teach yourself.
All right,
Not surprised.
we have more. As I'm walking over there, I want to ask you something really quick, because I think we have 10 minutes. We've seen the big wave of the sharing economy now, and a lot of disruption and grit with companies like Uber pressing legal challenges here and there. Do you think the sharing economy is going to continue, or is there a next wave coming, or do we have a lot of years yet to play out with the sharing economy?
I think that the sharing economy is stalled, and I think the incumbents will survive because they have a lot of votes behind them. They have a lot of political power, and a lot of people have come to depend on the Ubers and the Airbnbs. But I think what we saw with some of the smaller ones that have already fallen away is that there is a backlash. It's hard to argue with labor laws in various countries that are clearly set up to prevent them. So yeah, I think that sharing economy has reached a certain stasis. That would be my prediction.
Please.
Hi, my name is Renisa and I am from Kosovo. My question to you is, what would your advice be to all the women in this room? How can we change the statistics that 90% of entrepreneurs are male?
Yes, 45 minutes.
Tough question, but
yes.
I think it is very important to address it.
I agree with you. I would very much like to see that change myself. I think the best way to do it, well, it sounds like a silly answer, is to become an entrepreneur yourself, and it will take a generation. And what it requires, I think, in the long run, are examples of successful women entrepreneurs. You saw the statistic about how many of the top Inc. 5000 entrepreneurs came from families where a family member was an entrepreneur. There's something about the mindset. Maybe there's something actually in the DNA, but I think more likely it's you have to, at an early age, get the idea that this is an acceptable kind of career, that you see how it's done, you see what it's involved, and you start to factor it into your own life choices as you're growing up. I think women suffer a lot from too few examples, too few role models as successful growth entrepreneurs.
We saw that statistic of 90% that answered your survey were men, so I'm sure it spurred the question as well.
It did indeed, yes. Here's a psychological, interesting psychological fact that's related to that. Have you ever heard of a psychological phenomenon called stereotype threat?
No.
Have you heard of this? Stereotype threat is a well-documented, often observed psychological phenomenon in which a member of a group that is reputed stereotypically to be inferior at a particular action, when given that action as a test and reminded of their stereotypical inferiority at it, will underperform the average. So, for example, white men and athletics, when they're reminded they're generally worse than African American men, they underperform. African American men on math tests will underperform. Chinese American women, when told that they will underperform on a test compared to men, will underperform. This is true of women in entrepreneurship, I think. Told that this is not a role for you, there's just a kind of headwind against you. But the positive side of this is that there's something also called a stereotype advantage. And all that's needed to reverse it is to create a positive stereotype. So it works in reverse. So if you are a Chinese American woman in one famous experiment and you're told that as a woman you'll underperform on a math test, you will underperform the average. If you're told as a Chinese American person you'll outperform, you'll have a higher grade than you would have otherwise. So what we need is to get into the society the notion that women are the equals or the superiors of men at entrepreneurship and reverse that stereotype into a positive.
And all you need is guts, focus, and grit, and keep thinking about it, and you'll be even better off. All right, we have 10 more minutes on being a timekeeper, sort of strict person there, so that's awesome. All right, oh, she's got one.
Hi, Mateo de la Corda, SIT Slovenia office. I would like to make a follow-up to these questions.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for your lecture. Great. I really like how you emphasized, guts, focus, and grit. These are like life qualities, not business qualities. We emerge business from this. And you were talking about the examples, how we should provide more examples to the young people, to women. But my question is, for you as a journalist and editor, how to provide more systematic support that we get more entrepreneurial DNA into the society. How to, as a seat, we are empowering, encouraging these, I would say, light bulbs in people's lives, How can we support more guts, more focus, more grit in society as a whole, overall? Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because all Inc. writes about are entrepreneurs. So the answer to your question, sir, is buy more ink. Spread it around. That'll get it more, but look.
But in seriousness, is one answer really that you're saying is spread more stories about guts, focus, and grit? Is that helping?
I think I want to make a distinction here. And I think that at least in American business press and American popular press, I worry not that there's not enough lionization of entrepreneurs, but that there's too much. That we make entrepreneurship seem too easy. Everywhere you turn in the US, there's another pitch contest. And it's being sponsored not by Inc. or by Upfront Ventures or a venture capital firm or an entrepreneurial company. It's being sponsored by a shampoo or a women's magazine that's about fashion. It's just that entrepreneurship has become fashionable. And I think that is not helpful. Guts, focus, and grit is a true story of entrepreneurship. You know it's not easy. You know that it takes sacrifice. You know that the odds are stacked against you, and yet you still do it. And you know that that's necessary. That's the way it has to be. In a free enterprise system, not everyone can succeed, especially at entrepreneurship. But I don't think that message is getting out. And I don't want, on my watch at Inc., to see the noble job, the noble path that entrepreneurship is, I don't want to see that cheapened to something that anyone can do, because it's not.
All right. Well, We have 4.5 minutes. Oh, yes, here we go. But don't let that dissuade you from following your dreams.
Thank you. Yes, entrepreneurship has become fashionable. So fashionable is UX as well. You talked about the traits of the successful entrepreneurs, but did not mention anything about the traits of the products or the services. And could you comment on the user experience of this? I personally think that this is probably one of the most important traits of a successful product.
Well, I was speaking about entrepreneurship in general rather than any particular line of business or product. And what I said before about entrepreneurship as a kind of brotherhood, sisterhood that crosses industries and products, and obviously here at Seed, national borders, I think is true. And so I don't know exactly how to answer your question. I think that when I think about entrepreneurship, I think of the role of the entrepreneur, and I think of the business leader, the founder, the responsible person, the dreamer, the doer. But I'm indifferent to the industry or the product, or if there is even a product, if it's a service company. So I don't know how to answer that.
Follow up.
Just if I can put the question in a different way.
Okay.
Can there be a successful startup if the user experience of the product is bad?
You're from SAP, right? Just kidding, mate. Maybe about focus on human usage as user experience.
Yeah, I would say that no. I would say no. If the product is bad, the company won't prosper. That was true of Jay Hilburn, for example. His product was bad at first. And what happens then is that the entrepreneur has to have the kind of relentless business focus that allows him or her to pivot away to something better, the non-ego-driven willingness to improve on what might have been a mistaken first attempt, and improve it or go out of business.
All right, we have one burning question left.
Okay.
And it's the last one, so make it good.
Kudim Javori from Kosovo. I want to ask you, are entrepreneurs born as entrepreneur, or they are more later trained and can be successful entrepreneurs? Was this the best question?
That is a great question.
Can we learn it? Is it a skill?
That is a great question, and we could debate that all day long. I will say, however, that in the US, let me just point out a statistic. In the US, only about 6% of the workforce identifies as being entrepreneurs. Of the Inc. 5000, 63% said that one or another parent was an entrepreneur. That seems statistically valid to me, doesn't it to you? It suggests that somewhere, maybe nature, maybe nurture, but it makes a prima facie a case for the idea that there really is such a thing as an entrepreneurial gene, that entrepreneurs are born. There are, the point of what I was trying to say here today, and the conclusion of 37 years and thousands of stories of Inc., is that entrepreneurship is a lot about the character of the entrepreneur. Success is a lot about the character. And character traits, we know, are often inbred. There's something about drive and competitiveness that any one of you who's an entrepreneur knows is part of the package. That's inbred. Leadership, that's also part of the package. That's also inbred. Is every entrepreneur the son or daughter of another entrepreneur? No, obviously not. But yeah, I would say that it's a tendency that you're born with. And if it's nurtured by a society that creates an ecosystem where you can be considered a likely candidate for entrepreneurship, even if you're a woman, or even if you're a Kosovar, then that's the kind of place where you could flourish.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Eric rocking it. I was looking at the